we're quite capable of creating our own. And then he told me about Martha and Arthur, two rare white rhinos. South Africa had agreed to ship Arthur to Tanzania to mate with Martha. Veterinarians, game management officials, reproductive specialists, and the press discussed at length the benefits that would accrue with this international relationship. However, they soon discovered that rhinos cycle according to the length of daylight hours. Martha, on equatorial daylight time, was never quite synchronized with Arthur on Tropic of Capricornical time. But our team of deep thinkers figured a way around it. They'd artificially inseminate Martha. Well, to collect Arthur's semen, the agricultural engineers on the staff built a homemade ejaculator out of wire, copper electrodes, a hand crank, and lots of electrical tape. Arthur was quite tame, so they tied him up to a thorn tree. With proper lubrication, the head mogul inserted the prod and set the cowboys to cranking. Alas, Arthur showed no response. He's probably packed with dry feces, which is interfering with the conduction of the current, interjected the rhino-physiologist. So they tried to clean him out, but no luck. Being a desert beast, possibly there's a lack of internal moisture, observed the rhino-hydrologist. How about an enema? They hung a 20-gallon container from the tree, inserted a hose, and the water disappeared like Diet Sprite in the Sahara. Then the chief acting assistant veterinary cowboy technician strode forth and inserted his plastic-sleeved arm to evacuate the bowel. Well, Arthur had had enough. He clamped his aft torpedo door shut just above the technician's elbow, and they thundered off through the brush. 100 yards down the track, the inserted arm popped out, followed by 40 gallons of pent-up colored water. The invader lay like a drowned muskrat left in the furrow, and Arthur raced off to the other side of the game park. Well, you're right, I told Dr. Fossey. We couldn't have done it better. This is Baxter Black, brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
You're listening to KCAA Loma Linda at 106.5 FM, K293CF Moreno Valley.
Hey! What the? Honey! The water just stopped in here.
They turned it off because you're wasting water.
What? What are you talking about?
You know.
Because you know it's all about that drought, no water. It's all about that drought, no water. It's all about that drought, no water. It's all about that drought. Yeah, it's pretty clear, we're really short on blue. It's time to save it, like we're supposed to do. Some say it's doom, gloom, and all our grass must go. But together we can make it and enjoy our golden state. It's all about that drought, no water. It's all about
Welcome,
that drought.
good afternoon, from the desert to the mountains to the oceans to all across the beach and back to San Bernardino, where it's getting warmer, and hopefully by this weekend it'll be late 70s, possibly 80s, so we're very excited about that. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Starr, along with, and today is the day, Michael.
Is that V as in victory or D
Yeah,
as in
so I'll introduce the valiant, vibrant, versatile, victorious, virtuous, vital, vivid, voracious, voguish, valorous, Mr. Mike Barron.
Wow, thank you, Rob, for that amazing introduction. And
but you know, didn't mean to interrupt you, but you should thank me because I didn't include two other V words: vivacious and voluptuous.
Well, those of you that are watching on live streaming know exactly what Rob's talking about. So anyway, listen, wow, what a week, what a week. It's, you know what they did on February 2nd?
Yes, they extended it to October.
Yes, but more important than that, they actually went out and they measured the snowpack.
Yes, I heard that.
Which is pretty interesting, and
And
was
they
good
being
news.
the California
Department of Water Resources.
Right, sorry.
You bet. So that's good. And did you know that there's more snow and water content in that snow today than there's been in the last 5 years?
Yep.
So that's a good thing. So does that mean the drought's over, Rob?
Never. It's going to be a new way of life.
That's right. So, you know, it's about sustainability and about recognizing that things are changing. But, you know, change is only painful if you resist it.
That's correct.
So, you know, we got to go with the new mode, but also educate and
Absolutely.
inform so people can make good decisions.
Well, Felicia Marcus, who's the chair of the California Water Board, said that...
And who's actually been on this show.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's a wonderful lady, by the way. She says they'll extend the emergency conservation orders through October, but a lot of the regulations have drawn criticism from water districts despite efforts to ease them.
Well...
And I know they talked about in areas where it's really dry and hot and maybe or there's more building and people that they may relax that some, but that's not official yet.
Yeah, they've come up with kind of the calculus or the mathematics to do the adjustments, but the maximum that any of the water reduction targets will be lowered by is 8%. So if you had if you're Indio Water District and you had a 36% target to conserve water in 2015. This year, the best you could do probably would be 28%. That's if they keep the same targets, which they haven't really said yet.
Right.
I think they're going to wait until the magic date of April 1st for anybody that's interested in knowing just how severe watering restrictions and mandated water consumption reduction is going to be in 2016. April 1st is really the focal date.
Would you trust that on April Fool's Day?
Well, you have to, because it's the state of California is going to make the pronouncement. And, of course, when was the last time the government played a joke on you? Don't answer that question. We don't want to be banned from the air.
Yeah, my list is too long.
That's right.
But there's a gentleman from the Association of California Water Agencies, and he sent a letter to them and said they don't go far enough to reward communities that have invested millions to be resilient during the times of drought. And interesting, we're going to have Tim Quinn, who's the executive director of the Association of California Water Agencies. He's going to be on our next show.
Excellent.
So we can follow up with that letter that they sent off to Felicia Marcus and see what their comments are, and that should be interesting.
Well, I know that Felicia Marcus has always stated that the position of the State Water Resources Control Board is to take into consideration new information, to be flexible, but yet stay true to the course of education and reducing potable water consumption in California. Because, and this fact astounded me. In the last 10 years, Rob, not counting 2016, but in the last 10 years, do you know how many years we've had average or above average rainfall in the last 10 years?
No.
2.
That's it?
Only 2 years.
Wow.
And the entire California water infrastructure, when it was designed back, decades ago, assumed that there would only be 2 dry years out of every 5. And now we're seeing that it's half that, 2 years out of every 10. So we have, I think, the nation's most advanced water infrastructure. And if we can combine what the state of California government is trying to do, which is to increase the amount of recycled water, increase the amount of ground storage, increase the amount of above ground storage, and this is I think one of your key points that you've made several times, to increase the amount of rainwater that's captured when we do get rain. Because I think you said it's like 90%, maybe?
Almost 90%.
Almost 90% of the rainfall in the Southern California area
goes to the ocean.
Goes out to the ocean, and we have no control over that. And imagine if we could even just capture 10 or 15% more. So there are people at work within the California water agencies and the state government that are working on all of these different approaches. But of course, increased water use efficiency and water conservation have to be part of that total comprehensive effort to manage our water resources.
Absolutely. I think, people really got to thank the water agencies and themselves for the unbelievable amount of savings they've done. For example, let's look at Metropolitan Water District. They're one of the largest. They did one of the largest rebate programs in the country. They approved a $450 million conservation budget, which was incredible.
For 2016?
Yeah.
Or do you know?
And for 2014 through 2015, you know how much water they saved through their programs?
I would think probably, at least 500,000 acre feet.
944,000 acre feet.
So I was about half, but at least I was in the neighborhood.
You were.
So
I'll even give you a gift card for that.
oh, thank you.
What's interesting and how much recycled water they saved? 414,000 acre feet.
Wow. Well, I still think back to one of our guests, Seth Siegel, who wrote the book "Let There Be Water," where 100% of Israel's wastewater is recycled, and 90% of all the water that gets used by the agricultural community within Israel is recycled water.
Yep.
So,
well, I know there's lots of money that we got to spend and look at. We have to think like. I guess I'm using Israel as a comparison.
Or Australia, too,
yes,
because they're doing a lot of that.
You know, for groundwater, just some facts here that I had, they, for those 2 years, 115,000 acre feet, which is incredible. And they still have plans to go forward. But I think it's unbelievable that if you think about it, and if it's in your head, you can actually make it happen. It's not instantaneously, unfortunately, because you have to get the money and get it approved. You have to get the infrastructure put in place. It takes time, but I truly believe it's like designing products. If you can think about something, you know, do you remember the first time James Bond film came out, which was Goldfinger?
Yep.
And the guy had the jetpacks and the things like that. Everybody thought, that's really cool, and all the little guns and watches that turned into weapons.
Dick
and stuff.
Tracy.
Yeah.
Yep.
It all came to pass.
Yep.
So if you can think about it, it'll happen. It just obviously takes time and money and intuition and the right team of people to do it.
The power of positive thinking.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, one thing I think you're going to, well, first some sad news, and that is that.
You're getting rid of me?
No.
Okay, good.
No. That would be sad news.
Yes, it would.
And
because I wouldn't get rid of you. I need you.
Right. So California forests, unfortunately, have been more damaged, it's turning out, now that we've gotten through the summer and we're now in this, rainy season. Scientists are looking at the state of our California forests, and there's been a lot more damage because of the drought. And we actually see some of the types of trees really changing in terms of at what elevation within the mountain ranges different types of trees are able to exist. And when you have a drought, the tree weakens. Its resistance to infestation weakens. It doesn't have the same power or strength to.
Its immune system goes.
Yeah, well, the sap, that they use to fight against predators, insects, it gets weakened and the insects take over. So that's sad.
There was another tree, or I was reading about this morning, and I was going to bring it and I forgot about it, that it takes a lot of water, and it wasn't really a natural tree for California. And I'll get that for the next week's show. But they said it's planted all over the place in California. It just takes so much water, and they want to take them all out from.
I met a lady that I'll keep her nameless at this point in time because I haven't arranged for her to be on the show yet. But she's from the Tree of Life Nursery, which, of course, you can Google that. And amazing amount of information about California natives, how they're different from drought-tolerant plants, how they're different from California-friendly plants, because, all three of those descriptions sometimes are used interchangeably. And to be honest with you, they're not interchangeable. And we talked about the best way of watering these native plants especially, and she reinforced the idea that if you think about nature, how are native plants watered in nature? Well, they're watered by rain,
right, overhead
irrigation.
Yep.
Second thing is, when do they typically not get any water? In the summer. That's what makes them native. They survive. They go dormant or go into a very slow growth mode. What she said, unfortunately, with all this turf removal that occurred last year with the rebates, a lot of these native plants were installed, but there wasn't that educational knowledge base within the maintenance contractor community
tell them how to water it,
to say don't water in the summer.
Right.
So they watered in the summer, and now the plants have died. And and it was interesting because what she said was, well, what happens? Why do they die? I mean, well, because guess what? The ground is warm in the summer, so you put water on the ground. The temperature is higher.
Right.
You get disease. You get basically pathogens, which are bad little cells that little microbes that attack the plant. They go in and basically become parasites to the plant. So that's why you don't want to water in the summer a native plant, because you basically take away its defense.
To be.
Yeah. So
you know, we were talking earlier with the trees. They started this program years ago about feeding the children. Remember what Michael Jackson? We should start something. Feed the trees.
Well, you're right, because one of the things we had a chance to talk with a woman who was responsible for the City of LA Parks and Recreation Department. All the trees. There's something like, I don't know how many thousands of trees, and they are seeing some significant, unfortunate disease and death on the trees because, in the rush to remove the turf, they forgot to water the trees individually and independently. So that's kind of sad. Hey, one last thing, because this is right up your alley. What nut do you think uses a lot of water to grow?
Me.
Yeah, no, you're let's say, but you don't grow on trees.
No, but I'm a nut.
Yeah, but you don't grow on a tree. Almonds. Right? And you've often said, oh my gosh, almonds use a lot of water. Well, interesting how supply and demand and marketplace forces affect what's going on, because we've also heard that China is kind of they're not growing 15% a year anymore. Right. So now they're growing a lot slower. Well, remember where a lot of the demand for almonds was coming from? Yeah. China. Right. A lot of candy manufacturers.
They're switching from rice to nuts.
Well, no, they're actually going away from almonds because they can't.
Or is that where this expression "soup to nuts" came from?
Oh, okay.
No, but you're right. You're right in that.
But here's the thing: the price of almonds has dropped 40%.
Wow. Just
since July. That's basically what, 7 months? Mm-hmm. From $5 a pound to $3.10, and that's because consumers of almonds just got tired of paying the high prices. And guess what? Hazelnut producers and walnut producers, they went and said, hey, buy my nuts instead of the almonds, and,
Absolutely.
I can save you a lot of money.
Well, in 2 weeks, speaking of that, we're going to have a gentleman named Bob Curtis, who's Director of Ag Affairs for the Almond Board of California here. And so
hopefully they're still around, with the prices dropping so much.
Well, we got a great guest.
Who is that, Rob?
It's the Consul General of Israel, David Siegel. He's going to tell us more about what they've done with water. And
do we need to take a break before, or can we just?
No,
we
can go right into that. They're going to be at a summit, a California Israel Water Summit on March 3rd, which we're invited to.
Awesome.
And they got people like Alex Padilla, California Secretary of State, Eric Garcetti. There's a whole list I won't go through, but we get to interview a lot of those people for the show, so it's going to be great. So let's bring on our first guest. Good afternoon, Consul General Siegel. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. It's great to be on the show.
And we're pretty excited to have you. A couple things in general. I know we got your name, and I actually met Yaki Lopez at a meeting down in San Diego a couple months ago, and he introduced us to a gentleman named Seth Siegel. And so I know Siegel's a common name, but just for the listening audience, is that are you a relative or is he a relative?
Judging by the way the book is selling, I wish I was, but I'm not. We did interview for the book because we are, active, in terms of bringing Israeli technologies to California and to the Southwest. So he was very interested in that part of the story of Israel's global, water relationships, but no, he's really become an expert on water. I guess he spent 3 years researching the book, speaking to hundreds of water experts, both in the U.S., globally, and certainly in Israel. And it's a wonderful book, very accessible to the public, and I think a very important statement about the prevalence of the problem of water. And it's an empowering statement in the sense that yes, there are things that we can do that are very significant to overcome this challenge that appears to be getting worse globally, and certainly here in the Southwest, we all feel it.
Right. I just wanted to say one of the things that impressed me about the book and the author is that not only did he identify all of the challenges and the problems, but rather than leave it in that pessimistic position, what he did is he offered solutions that he obviously researched and found so many of them in Israel. That's what we're motivated us to seek you out and ask you on our show. So we're looking forward to getting a little more of that perspective of the Israeli miracle, so to speak, in the desert with respect to water. And of course, we also know that there are other areas of technology where Israel has taken a world leadership position. So we're looking forward to investigate, at least from a water perspective, how Israel is leading the world.
Well, it really would be great to discuss it, and we're here for you.
Thank you.
Mike was the one who discovered the book and told me about it, and then I went out and bought the book, and I started reading. It was incredible. Then I went down to San Diego at a meeting that he had with the JNF, and I was just blown away by the technology and things that Israel's doing. I mean, he went into discussion on how they mine for recycled water and what they do with that. It blows me away. But in that book, he reported Israel has reached a level of sustainability with respect to urban, industrial, and agricultural water needs. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, first of all, the short answer is yes. If you look at Israel today, it's really a phenomenon because it's the first society in history, I guess, it's my understanding, that has been able to turn around its water economy from a deficit to a surplus, and certainly being able to achieve that in the heart of the Middle East, is quite a significant success. But beyond that, if you look at the statistics of Israel, and you think about the fact that in 1948, when Israel was established, almost 67 years ago, we had 1/10 of the population. So our population has increased by at least a factor of 10, from 600,000 to almost 9 million people now. And you think of the fact that Israel's economy then was tiny. I mean, Israel was a struggling, developing country with not enough to feed itself. And today it's a global hub of innovation, GDP per capita rivaling the best in Europe and so on. So our economy has grown by, roughly a factor of 50, 60 over those years. So 10 times the population, 60 times the economy and growth, which would mean that you need to consume a lot of water, and at the same time, rainfall has declined by half. So you'd think that on paper, Israel would be in one of those societies that is suffering from severe shortages of water, yet we are a surplus water nation. So Israel annually creates twice the amount of water that nature provides it with. And the way we do that is, people focus on desal and specific technologies. That may be true, but the reality is that there are at least 20 areas that Israel excels at and must excel at. And it's one of those things. It's like cybersecurity or technology. You can never rest on your laurels. So we reinvent this every day, and we have to, because we know that things are getting worse and worse. And to be ahead of the curve, you have to be the best in recycling water, the best in desalinating water, in drawing on brackish water, on coming up with drip irrigation and exciting agricultural innovations. It's all part of a high-tech economy. So this is sort of how we see the water market. We are the best in the world, but it's not a race that you can ever stop. It's something that we'll always have to be ahead of the curve on.
So there was something that was mentioned in this book that applies directly to Israel that I found kind of quite outstanding or even amazing, and that was with the advances in processing wastewater that Israel's water industry has achieved. That I don't know if it was public or private, but basically Israel went to the Palestinian Authority, I'm told, and actually said, we would like to buy your wastewater so that we can process it. We will actually pay you for your sewer water. Is there truth to that? I mean, is that something you can confirm?
Well, I can certainly confirm the fact that Israel is number one in the world in recycling water. So we recycle nearly 90% of all the wastewater in Israel. Now, beyond the statistic, here's an amazing fact. The larger your population is, the more water you produce. because by definition, a large population creates, a large amount of wastewater. Now, it doesn't mean that you drink it, but it certainly means that you can water your agriculture with it, your green areas with it. I was just in Palm Spring, and I drove down, and you're sort of struck by, here we are in the middle of the desert, and everything is so green, and you see the sign saying that, these gardens are being irrigated by non-potable water. So that's sort of the way to think about this. If you can recycle wastewater and use it in golf courses, in grasses and lawns, you don't really have to tear out those lawns as long as you're not using drinking water. And in Israel, wastewater is sold at a premium and is bought at a premium. So I'm not surprised by what you're asking. I can't confirm, exactly what we buy from where. But, just the city of Tel Aviv, which is a metropolis of over 1 million people, basically irrigate the wastewater that is produced by that urban area, basically underwrites all of the agriculture in southern Israel. So it's true that wastewater is held at a premium, and it's worth a lot in terms of our economy and anyone's economy.
What amazed Mike and I was the fact when Seth was telling us about how when they recycle the water, they mine it for chemicals and materials, and they sell a lot. We joked about in our world eating a lot of food made by chicken fat, and they take that out and they sell it as lubricants after they refine the water. Also, the toilet paper, that amazed Mike, and what they do to collect those things and then sell that off, and I guess they make quite a bit of money from that.
It's all recycled. It's true, and I think it's very important. It's both in recycling, but also in desal. So when you take water out of the ocean and you separate it from all the minerals, environmentalists are very concerned about, what happens when you dump it back into the ocean. Well, these days we're developing technologies, we're not the only ones, where those minerals won't be dumped back into the ocean. They will be utilized, and the higher the rate of technological innovation, the less waste you will have, because the more of it can be reused, from everything from printing books, out of wasted toilet paper, to using those salts in various industrial capacities and agricultural capacities. So I think this is the way of the future, and it will enable us to innovate that much more by being able to value and utilize many of these products.
We were talking about how it is that Israel has been able to achieve such advances, and so many other countries, including the U.S., have lagged. And one of the points that was brought up to me was that, well, in Israel, there was one national water agency, and if this is incorrect, let me know, but the one national water agency that had responsibility for supplying drinkable water to the population. And here in California, for example, we have 422 water agencies that supply water to 3,000 people or more, and then another 2,600 plus that service less than 3,000 people, down to even a water agency that services 15 people. And not that there's been anything written about this, but do you think having that national agency versus this much more decentralized approach to water management throughout the state of California, do you think that has made a difference in just what can be undertaken from a technology investment standpoint?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes. And of course, it's very difficult to compare different political systems. But the reality in Israel is that from the beginning of the modern state of Israel, the decision was made that water was such a critical resource that it couldn't be in the hands of private forces in the market. It had to be, controlled as a public good. So in Israel, in theory, and you'll find it in Seth's book, if you stand on a rooftop and collect water in a pot, that belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to private use. There is no private rights on water in Israel. That's number one. So it's a public good. Number two, it's true, we have one water agency that is responsible for water policy in the country. Another interesting thing that we did that you see more and more here is that the politicians are sort of kept out of the decision-making and the decision making is really done by the engineers and the water professionals. So it's really almost a perfect model of maximizing the use of water. Another interesting thing we did, which has become very helpful for us, and it was a difficult step to take, and it wasn't taken that long ago, was to value water at its real price, so not to subsidize water anymore. And that allows you to introduce all these incentives like rebates. Farmers become interested in newer ways, more efficient ways of irrigating and so on, because water becomes very costly. And that's where you can begin looking at all these innovations and introduce real market forces that incentivize new technologies. So that's some of what we've done. In the very early years of Israel, we prohibited flood irrigation, and we basically mandated that every source of water would be measured and metered in the state of Israel, and that was already in the early 50s. So I think some of the policy decisions that Israel made earlier on, for obvious reasons, being a nation in the desert and so on, were very, very helpful in creating the conditions that Israel becomes this global hub of technological innovation on water technologies.
That's a great summary of some of the distinct differences within the political structures and around water. So one of the challenges we have is many times the boards of directors of the water agencies are either politically appointed or elected by the voters, who obviously, as a consumer, I don't want my water prices to go up, and we've inadvertently kept water prices low, below replacement costs. And so it was cheaper to waste water in irrigation of landscapes than it was to hire a professional to, improve that system or fix that system. And same thing in agriculture. We still have, I think the majority of acreage in California is still flood irrigated. So very pertinent points. That's really, really significant.
It sounds expensive, but and our price of water includes desalination and recycling and everything that has to do with water, cleaning it, distributing it. And by the way, we have one water price in Israel, so you pay the same price, even if you're the furthest away or the closest. It doesn't matter. But what it enables you to do over time is introduce efficiencies, so that in actual fact, water rates in the United States are going up, and water rates in Israel are declining several years in a row now. So I think there's a model here that needs to be looked at. It doesn't mean that California will adopt everything that Israel did, and there's no need for that. The whole idea is to think about what are those technologies that we can introduce, and what, not everything has to be $1 billion like a desalination plant. Educational program can be almost free, and the kind of curriculum you introduce in preschools and schools so that kids know that water is valuable for every drop of water is not an expensive proposition. So, there's so many things that can be done on water to introduce those efficiencies that, again, I think, all of us are very optimistic when we know that these are models that work. So there's a lot to overcome this.
So go ahead, Rob.
Okay, I was going to say, we know in March of 2014 that Benjamin Netanyahu signed a memorandum of understanding with California Governor Brown, and I also understand they signed a memorandum of understanding with San Diego and Metropolitan Water. Can you expand a little about that and how that all works out, what's the expected outcome, and so forth?
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu was here in March 2014. So that was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, and signed a very important agreement with the governor of California. It was an overall strategic agreement between Israel and California that related to a whole host of areas, not just water, but chief among those areas was water. And since then, Israel signed agreements with L.A. We're in the process of doing the same with L.A. County. We signed with West Hollywood. We signed with Beverly Hills. We're looking at an agreement now with the Southern California Association of Governments, which would enable us to really communicate with almost 200 cities all at the same time in 6 counties, including San Bernardino and Riverside and so on. The plant was established in Carlsbad. So there's a lot happening, and we're pushing very hard in this part of the country, in the Southwest, beyond California as well, to sign agreements between the states and Israel so that we can identify where the resources are that we can maximize together. So we can actually partner on innovation and share the cost. So California can put in $1, Israel puts in $1, and both of us basically enjoy $2 of innovation. And we're doing the same with Nevada, Colorado, throughout the region. And I think this is really the vision for the future: is connecting locally in significant ways, partnering on technology where we can both learn from each other, and be allies locally, not just globally.
That sounds great because we just see the results that the state of Israel has accomplished with respect to water management, with respect to technology. So somebody obviously has been thinking ahead and doing a great job. I've got to ask you something about children, the youth, and that is one of the challenges we face is when we ask our grade school children, where does water come from? Where does your water come from? They go, from the faucet. What kind of answer would the Israeli children give to that same question? Would it be a more in-depth or more knowledgeable response, do you think?
Well, I think a typical Israeli kid would tell you from the rock, because they know the story of Moses, taking water out in the Bible. So for us, water goes back culturally and religiously thousands of years. So in Israel, it was a very natural thing to treat water as a major national resource. So I think most kids in Israel would tell you, because they learn very early on, just like before you cross the street, you look left and right so that you're not run over, that you treat every drop of water as if it's a whole universe. And we do it very early on, and the kids teach the parents. And I could tell you a funny story from my own family. Whenever we have relatives from the United States come to visit us in Israel, and invariably they're in the kitchen, and some adult leaves the faucet on, and the water's rushing down into the sink because they're turning around to do something else, my kids run up to the faucet and shut it. And you can see the cultural gap between how Israelis treat water and how Americans sort of treat water, and it all comes out of our different cultural backgrounds and our need to look at water as a significant thing. So I think we're seeing that happen more and more in the States now, and there is a convergence between our two cultures when it comes to the respect of water and understanding what it means to save water. So hopefully more and more kids will be able to focus on what's beyond the faucet.
How's the water independence? How has it changed Israel in general? What's your opinion on what it's done?
Well, there are all these perceptions out there about Israel, that it's isolated, that it's at war and so on. And I have to tell you, in our community, there's so many fundraisers, and everyone is focused passionately on Israel, and most of the focus is political and so on. But I think what we're missing is the fact that it's a country, as I said before, of almost 9 million people. 20% of Israel are Arab, Christians, and Muslims. It's in the heart of the Middle East. It's a very vibrant democracy. A whole lot of things are happening in Israel that are very exciting. And when it comes to innovation and water, I think the conditions are such that just fuel innovation in every area. So it's a very exciting place to be part of. So when it comes to the perception of Israel, it's very far from what people understand. Israel is not isolated. In fact, I'll tell you, there are a few small countries that are really interested in Israel right now: China, India, Japan, South Korea, all of Africa, all of Latin America, most of Europe. Beyond the politics, everyone understands that there's a huge premium on innovation, and that innovation is taking place in Israel at a feverish pace. Apple is there with its second largest research facility in the world, with roughly 1,000 engineers. Microsoft and Google and every single large American multinational cannot afford not to be in Israel today. And that includes car manufacturers and IT companies and healthcare and banking and cybersecurity now, which is the big thing. The more you innovate, the more vulnerable you are. So someone has to give an answer to what about our privacy and what about our healthcare records. And all of this is work that's being done in Israel, not alone, together with the United States and other countries. But, it's very, very far from reality to think that Israel is isolated, because it certainly isn't.
I do have to. I just wanted to ask one quick question, and it had to do with the National Water Agency, and that is, so when they sell water to the consumer, is it by the cubic meter? Is it by the liter? How do they sell it, and what's the price for a unit? From a comparative standpoint, because here in California we can be as low as 90 cents a unit, which is basically 100 cubic feet, 748 gallons for 90 cents. Or
how much does a bottle of water cost you at the store?
Oh my gosh, a gallon is gonna. I mean, if you can get it on sale, what would you say, Rob? Maybe a gallon, maybe $1.49.
Well, that's the true price of water without discounts, right?
Yeah.
So in Israel, I think more or less it's the true price of water, plus energy, desalination, which by the way is always declining, recycling, distributing. So the price is higher than here. I'd have to check for you exactly what it is. And
I was just curious because we go up to $28 in certain areas where there it's just a very shortage of very small reservoirs or whatever.
So we measure it by meter cubed, so it's a little different.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I would say, according to what I have here, and by the way, it's going down all the time. So it's under 8 shekels, which would be, I guess, $2.50.
Yep. Okay. Per liter?
$10 per liter.
Okay.
You do the calculation, which is beyond me. But, what is important is the trends, right? So the trends are going down. Now it's under 8. A couple of years ago it was over 9. So over time you're seeing the prices in Israel decline, and the amounts of water being increased to the extent that we do export to our neighbors. And if you think about the fact that fruit and vegetables that Israel is a huge exporter of are really products that are water. They're water of a different kind. Israel is basically exporting water, both technologies and the actual water, both to our neighbors, the Palestinians and Jordan and other parts of the Middle East, but certainly in product and produce, a lot of water is being exported.
I've also read that the scientists there, the agriculturists, are working on water that contains a little bit of salt, and they're developing crops that will thrive on that as well.
So that's one of the 20 top 20 things that Israel does. And if you look in the book, I won't tell you what page, but it's page 242. Interesting, because that's the Middle East resolution. On page 242, Seth Siegel in the book lays out, roughly 16 areas that Israel excels in, and that's from pumping and purifying aquifers and wells, to desalinating, to drilling deep wells to gain brackish water, to developing seeds that thrive on brackish water, the treatment of sewage, reusing rainwater and capturing it, smart landscaping, seeding rain clouds, strictly demanding all appliances and toilets being hyper water efficient, and on and on and on. Leak detection before the leaks occur, water pressure management from afar. All of these are smart systems, which means that your economy is basically doing high tech, through water innovation. And the list goes on. So certainly developing crops that can thrive in brackish water, including, we have vineyards in our desert that barely use water. Just finding ways, agriculture is a high-tech industry in Israel.
Do you find that the neighboring countries, how does that affect? Is it a good politically environment to have this water technology? I mean, is it making relations better or helping?
Well, what's happening in the Middle East right now, and I know everybody's focused on ISIS and all the scary things in the Middle East, but all of those bad things that are happening are really driving the other countries together. And more you see, maybe not as public as we'd like it to be, the countries in the region realizing that Israel is an anchor of stability. It's not, the Arab states in the Middle East, and there are 350 million people. That's a lot of people. Divided into all these countries, are buffeted by ISIS, are buffeted by the Shiite extremists, the Sunni extremists, and all of those things that are going on. And they used to look at Israel as their enemy, but not anymore. And quietly, but surely and steadily, you hear more and more, now also publicly, that the Arab states in Israel are moving closer and closer to each other. And part of it is the fact that they are net importers of water and net importers of food. And you think about ISIS and the global problem that is now. Where did this all come from? It came from the broken state of Syria. And why did Syria break? It broke because of a long-term drought. So, you look at the world today and you realize that water is just evaporating and disappearing, and more countries will need it. These technologies are critical. So I think to answer your question, Arab states today, if they're not, crazy extremists, and there are many of them that are not, and they're trying to survive in this very complex environment, look at Israel today both as a anchor of stability and a hub of technological innovation. And there's more and more business being done under the table, and I think that's a good thing. And in the long term, the rest of the Middle East will have to do what Israel's doing, and we'll be more than happy to share these technologies with any country. We have water relations with 150 countries in the world. We don't have diplomatic relations with 150 countries in the world. That means that we're doing a lot of water business with countries that, quote-unquote, don't talk to us diplomatically. So it's an interesting story that is worth following carefully.
Well, water is certainly life, so
yes.
It'd be silly not to. Mike, any follow-up?
Well, only to say that the statement that was shared in another conversation that David Ben-Gurion had, and that he wanted to see the deserts of Israel bloom, certainly that vision certainly has made a lot of progress with Israeli technology and Israeli policy. So I'm personally excited to hear that there are these memorandums of understanding with so many of cities within the state of California, and also the fact that Israel has these water relationships with 150 countries. Maybe that may, as you say, in the long run, more of the world will see Israeli technology as a reason to establish those political connections. So thank you for sharing that information with us. We know there's a lot more to the Israeli miracle, but we're kind of focused just on water, so we'll leave it at that. But thank you so much for taking time to share with us your perspective and your knowledge.
Well, thank you both very much, and it's a conversation that we'll love to continue with all Californians.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, that was a great interview with David Siegel, who's the Consul General of Israel. And we're going to go take a little break now. You're listening to the Water Zone on KCAA 1050 AM and 106.5 FM with Mike and Rob, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Are your monthly water bills draining your wallet? Then you need Valley Soil, your one-stop expert on water conservation to save you water, time, and most of all, money. With over 35 years of experience, Valley Soil has implemented numerous conservation programs for water districts throughout California. They have performed over 12,000 water audits and installed over 300,000 smart irrigation products for municipalities, residential, and commercial property owners, saving over 293 million gallons of water each year. That's enough to fill 15,000 swimming pools. Their services also include indoor water audits, leak detection, retrofits, reclaimed water systems, and managed water use and data tracking. As certified irrigation auditors and a state-licensed landscape contractor, you can trust them to be knowledgeable about the services you need, products they install, and best practices in water conservation. For an individualized water solution for you, contact them today at 888-268-1009. That's 888-268-1009 or valleysoil.com. Remember, when it comes to innovative ideas to save water, Valley Soil never lets you run dry.
Are you looking for the right place to purchase your landscaping items? Well, come see us at Hydroscape. Hydroscape offers a large selection of irrigation products including Irritrol and Toro, such as their efficient precision nozzles. For 40 years, Hydroscape has been family-owned and operated, serving Southern California. With 17 locations, our knowledgeable and experienced staff is equipped to help you with all your irrigation, landscape, and outdoor living projects. Whether you're installing irrigation systems, wanting to maintain a healthy landscape, or simply create a beautiful lit space for outdoor entertaining, Hydroscape is the place to go. Visit our website at hydroscape.com for more information and find helpful articles on our blog, or call our customer service center at 1-800-395-4477.
You're back with Brock and Rob. And Rob, how you doing this afternoon? Hope everything's going good. For those of you who are in the local area and like to speak to us, especially Mikeypedia and me, the number is 909-888-5222. And if you're out of the 909 area, please call 888-909-1050. And we hope you call us in. And, we're going to talk about our contest, just to remind everybody. You have till February 15th. And the idea behind the contest is you'd go to www.torowatersmart.com and you pick a date at the end of February of how much rain is going to hit by the end of February for the whole month of February. You have till the 15th. You can choose the city you live in or any other city, the city of your girlfriend, anywhere in the United States. Pick a city and give your guess of how much rain is going to occur for the entire month of February. And winning that, you get a $100 gift certificate, and depending on where you live, we'll find some place for you to go after the dinner so you can spend your money on the dinner and then have something extra to take your friends out and have a good time. We're going to have a special segment, as I mentioned to you before, and he'll be here in a second, and it's going to be called the DIY Sprinkler Guy with Richard Daigle, who's the owner of Irrigator Tech, irrigation certification school. And Richard's just joined us. Richard, how are you today?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. That traffic was something.
Well,
anybody that's stuck on the 10 freeway, boy, that's something.
Yeah. Well, listen, you don't even look. You look great, and
not even a sweat.
At the CLCA show, at the landscape
at the CLCA show that was in Ontario.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just bumper to bumper to get here.
Well, we are glad you're here,
and we'll send a helicopter next time for you.
Wow.
But anyway,
on your budget, buddy. No.
I'll put it on your card.
Okay.
Anyway, we're starting a new segment called DIY Sprinkler Guy, and Richard's going to talk about a common problem that you may have at your home and how you can resolve it.
Yeah,
and please call in if you have a question.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things to look for, just a minor thing, is when you have your irrigation valve. So what we'll do is every week we'll talk about controllers or heads or whatever you want to talk about. Definitely call in and ask the three of us, because I got some geniuses beside me. But I'm going to go ahead and They're looking around. Where?
Who walked in?
Yeah, they're all like, did somebody else walk in here?
Hey, we get a raise.
But when you're adjusting your valves, every house has a valve out front. And some of the lines might have, 6 heads on it. Some of them might have 7 or 12. And what you want to do is adjust that valve to the sprinkler heads. So you go out and you turn it on automatically, look at it, and if you see it misting and fogging and starting to blow on the sidewalk and go where you don't want it to go, then what you want to do is there's a little cross handle on top, and you want to make sure that you start turning that down. It's called a flow control. It's usually a little cross, and as you turn it down, you'll see it dip a little bit, your sprinkler head. And when it dips, turn it up a quarter turn, and you'll get nice, fat water drops landing on the grass where you want it to go and not running down the street and going on the plants, and it's going nice and slow with fat water drops out in the field.
And there's been testing done to show that fatter droplets are heavier droplets, so they're less affected by wind. And then when they hit the ground, there's more energy to actually penetrate and get that water down into the root zone. So it really does make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. So this is just a small tip that everybody, every home, everything that you have, just go out and turn on your stations and then just look at each one. So if you had like 6 heads, you might turn it down, 3-4 turns. You've got more heads, you need more flow. You got less. So you're adjusting the valves to the sprinkler heads.
So that's like me being a bigger guy. So when I jump into pool, I create larger water droplets to go out.
Yeah, that's what everybody says about me, too.
Yeah.
Hey, though, one thing I'm going to say, because I've run into this, where that operating pressure is like maybe 70 or 80 or 90 psi, which happens in Southern California oftentimes, that if you turn that cross handle down, maybe 6 or 7 times, and everything looks great, I'm going to suggest then you turn off that valve from the controller and test it to see if you can turn it on again, because sometimes you have to turn that flow control stem down so much that poor thing can't
open up.
It can't open up inside. So just double check that, because that's one way to save water, right? Your valve doesn't
turning
open.
it down so low. But if you go into a normal box store and just picked up a valve and said, "Hey, I'm using a 3/4 inch," but you needed it to be 1 inch, you could have undersized the valve, and by turning it down, it almost has to shut off before it actually adjusts the heads. Or if you oversize it, the same thing can happen. And a lot of the big box stores don't explain that to you. So, but it's a very easy mistake to happen.
Well, I was just going to say too that when you have that high pressure problem, there are Precision Series pressure compensating nozzles. So the combination of pressure compensating precision nozzles and turning the flow control.
Oh my gosh,
it's
that's
like
unbelievable.
That's probably going to take care of 90% of all the overpressurized system, and that's one of the big water wastes, and that is high pressure. So I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, just a small tip that makes a huge amount of difference that would only take you a little bit to do.
And how much does that cost?
Nothing.
It's free. And we all have to try to do our best to continue to save water, because even though we have more snow, we have more rain, guess what? All those aquifers underneath the ground that we don't see, they're still empty. Yep. We got to fill them up.
They're getting sucked dry. So if you have a question, like I said, we're going to have this every week. For the DIY sprinkler guy, Richard Daigle. Richard, how do they get a hold of you and your school?
They can go to irrigatortech.com. But a lot of tips. So if we talk about them, you can go to Green Industry News on YouTube, and I've got about 400 videos on there, and you can click through and see all sorts of little tips. But definitely, if you know something you want to know, send it in to us. You can email me at Irrigator Tech, and I will make sure I have the answers for you.
Or at www.torowatersmart.com. And that's about the end of the show, guys.
Great.
And we'll be here next week.
Excellent. Keep saving water, California.
This is 1050 AM, KCAA Loma Linda, and 106.5 FM, Yucaipa.
As the owner of my business, I wear a lot of hats. I'm accounting, sales, and so much more. But I don't know marketing.
Let Dex Media be your marketing department. Our team can create a digital plan for you with everything from search to social. Contact Dex Media, that's DEX Media, to get found, get chosen,